Welcome to A World of Difference Embracing Neurodiversity. I'm Daryl Owens. French Impressionist Edgar Degas once clarified that art is not what you see, but what you make others see. While art is a form of expression, a means to connect to the world, for neurodivergent children, the arts in its many forms can paint a landscape for self-discovery, chip away at anxiety, and lift self-esteem. And it can also remind us that sometimes the most beautiful art comes from seeing the world in a different way. For many kids who learn and think differently, the classroom can prove challenging. However, by providing a creative outlet, sensory engagement, and a structured environment, the arts offer a unique space where neurodivergent kids can thrive. On this episode, we raise the curtain on a California college prep school where art is life and life is art for its twice exceptional students. Next, our panel of national experts paints a clearer portrait of the benefits of engaging neurodivergent children in the arts. And later, you'll meet our latest difference maker, a teenager from Florida whose vivid creations speak volumes about his talent. We begin in Studio City, California at Bridges Academy, where all the world's a stage, or a canvas, or a pottery wheel, and the students reap the benefits of art that comes from making others see.
Bridges Academy is a school for kids in grades 4 through 12. This school has a really important philosophy, and that is we are strength-based, talent-focused. And we really believe that through developing their strengths and interests, we can develop the whole child. That's where the arts come in. A lot of these kids are talented in the arts, or at least very creative, or have more of an applied arts talent area. And so a lot of the time they're involved in what we call this enrichment or talent development opportunities. They have electives every day that allows them to be great in acting, music, or fashion design, or writing, whatever their interest and talent area is.
What I've seen over the years is that they're a little trepidatious, some of them are a little trepidatious about drama, performing arts, standing up in front of everybody. So I'm like, oh, it's not you. Let's scratch that. We're gonna throw identity out and we're just gonna have fun. We're gonna play. So usually we start with play. In this particular intersession, they were studying biomes and how to survive in a biome the first half of the year. And then, so I thought about like, what is it they're talking about this year? Like, what are they constantly talking about? And they're constantly checking each other on their language and who's of what generation. So we decided to put it together into a zombie apocalypse, like their own biome of middle school that they have to survive. And they latched on to the idea of zombies and generations.
I love theater, I love film. I think that this school has a combination of lots of different things in the arts, all sorts of clay, pottery, there's film, there's acting. It's focused on a very broad range of different spectrums of different topics. Art is all about differences. I think that when you look into it, it's all you are expressing your individuality on whatever canvas of your choosing.
It's really important to give them a different way to express themselves and to communicate. And a lot of the physical hands-on artwork becomes really, really important for them. Giving them a way to speak and think through their hands as soon as they can start working physically and manually with materials, suddenly a whole new language comes out for them. A lot of our students are so creative and they have a lot of ideas in their head, but once it comes time to express it through things like written language or verbal language, it can be difficult for them. And so suddenly giving them a way to speak with pictures and with materials, it becomes sort of a superpower for them in a lot of ways.
When I'm doing like art or film or like performing arts, I get to kind of almost like be someone else. I don't know if that makes sense. But for example, like when I'm acting, I can be like a totally different character and not have any of like the personality traits or any of the problems that I'll face in life. Or I don't know, when I'm drawing, I can just blank out and just like draw or whatever.
Film helps these kids in a way that I never dreamed that it would help them. Kids that have trouble writing, write scripts. The kids that didn't want to come to school now come to school because they enjoy film. They enjoy the creation of it. We're doing it for fun, but they're also taking it into science and they're taking it into humanities, and that's how they're doing their projects. It has changed some of these students from completely shut down to thriving in this community.
I have a lot of freedom to learn in a way that I enjoy. If you're interested in whatever film, as I am very much, you might be able to make like a film about whatever the Roman Empire. That's something I did earlier on if you're learning about that, to show your knowledge of it while also doing something that you enjoy.
It's definitely impacted my life a lot and what I want to do, and definitely made me much more focused on like just writing in general, like script writing.
They may actually be nonverbal, or they may be stuttering outside of our room, and then all of a sudden you put a mic in their hand and all of a sudden they're rapping, they're improvising flawlessly, and that is pretty mind-blowing.
Topics that are as broad as blacksmithing to Turkish television shows to vexillology, the study of flags, do incredible work and very deep and in-depth research and creating presentations and doing very high-level work in the most unusual topics imaginable. So at Bridges, this is where students really can shine and be their unique self.
That's a wrap.
Next, let's meet our experts who outline the value for kids who think and learn differently of pursuing the arts. Dr. Anna Krasno is a licensed psychologist and the clinical director of the Kegel Autism Center at the University of California, Santa Barbara. She oversees the clinical training and supervision of the staff and designs and implements clinical service initiatives. The Kegel Center annually stages Unmasking Through the Art, which aims to uplift neurodivergent artists and members of the greater Santa Barbara community who think and learn differently. Dr. Kathy Malchiotti is a research psychologist, a licensed professional art therapist, and registered expressive arts therapist. She is the founder, director, and lead faculty member of the Trauma-Informed Practices and Expressive Arts Therapy Institute. She's the author of over 20 books, including Trauma and Expressive Arts Therapy, Brain, Body, and Imagination in the Healing Process, and Understanding Children's Drawings. Kimberly Waters is an assistant professor of studio arts at Beacon College in Leesburg, Florida, America's first accredited baccalaureate institution dedicated to educating neurodivergent students with learning differences. Her works have appeared in exhibitions at galleries such as Urban Glass in Brooklyn, New York, HQ Gallery in Makanda, Illinois, and Copenair Gallery in St. Louis, Missouri. Her pieces grace the permanent collections of the Prague Czech Gallery of Glass in the Prague, Czech Republic, and the Ringling College of Art and Design in Sarasota, Florida. And we're going to begin our conversation with Dr. Krasno. What are some of the benefits of involving children with learning differences in art?
So there are so many benefits to involving children with learning differences in art, and I can name a few here. So what I really think about is how it can help children develop a sense of confidence and pride in what they are producing and creating. I also see, particularly with our work here at the Kegel Autism Center, how important it is for building a sense of community and a sense of connection with others. I see that in our groups for children and adults who are autistic and neurodivergent, and how they come together in putting together creative pursuits and finding people who have similar interests to themselves and making those connections. I also think a lot about how the population I work with, autistic and neurodivergent individuals, are constantly having to mask or hide their differences. And this can be effortful and exhausting. And what we've really seen through the arts and artistic pursuits is how individuals can show who they truly are, like their authentic selves, through art. And this is really important because a lot of people, neurodivergent folks, might have to shift who they are to fit in with society. And this is so exhausting and can lead to a mental health toll. And having the arts as an opportunity to really show their internal experiences and be seen by others and have a way to show others what their experiences are like in a way that is understood by others and witnessed by others is just really, really important. And so I would say there are lots of benefits for children with learning differences being involved in the arts. The last I can think about is also there's so much loading on verbal exchanges and talking in our society, and the arts provide a completely different forum, non-verbally, through the body, through all different ways to express one's emotions and experiences.
Thank you. So, Dr. Malchiotti, are there certain types of art forms that have proven particularly beneficial to individuals with learning differences?
Well, that's a great question. And I think a lot of parents are so interested in that too, and teachers as well. There really aren't really specific interventions for learning disabilities through the arts, but we can qualify that and say there are different parts of the arts that we know are very effective for different reasons. So one example would be anything in the visual arts, even mark making, doodling, very simple image making. It stimulates language. I know a lot of parents and teachers are interested in that. And that's across the board. We've had those studies for almost 25 years supporting that idea that creating something visual will stimulate story. So it stimulates story, also stimulates memories. How much we remember is stimulated almost 2 to 3 times as much than talking alone. So that's pretty significant stuff when you think about just simple drawing or mark making. There's music and sound that support rhythm. Rhythm's a really basic connection between all of us. And, there are a lot of studies too that show that just having children, all types of children, including our neurodivergent population, it helps them learn rhymes, and rhymes lead to supporting reading. So, we have those aspects there. It's not necessarily about playing musical instrument, but just the rhythm itself and in the sound and the music making. And then I'd say the one that's really important is movement, because introducing movement, and it doesn't have to be a formal dance, but movement is an art form. It helps us think better. And we know that from many, many studies, growing literature in this whole idea of thought can be embodied through movement. And by introducing movement to children, they will learn and think more. So I think these things that are part of the arts, that are mechanisms, part of just what the arts are so significant to learning and growing and development.
All right, well, thank you. So, Kimberly, you work with collegians in studio arts at Beacon College. What are some of the misconceptions about the abilities of collegians and even children when it comes to the arts?
So I really find that, like, in my experience working with the students, that a lot of them feel kind of defeated sometimes when they start, thinking that they might not be as good as everybody else. They do a lot of comparisons. However, when we start talking about art, and I work with students to show that there's creative problem solving and there's many different ways to get to the end goal, and it's not so linear. And I think growing up and going through school, they're made to feel like every learning's linear. They either get it right or they don't. And a lot of those things, what we end up finding out usually towards the end of class, of the semester, is that they've improved their self-confidence and understanding, using this creative problem solving to kind of figure out that it's almost like they have superpowers. They have the patience and the ability to outlast other students that might be easier to like remember stuff. But, I think in general, it's, thinking that they're either not good enough or lazy, where it's actually quite the opposite. And I notice a lot of students can hyperfocus really, really well, especially when it comes to like getting involved into something like, the making of like building something three-dimensional or getting into drawing. And it's just really lovely to see that kind of confidence that happens once they start incorporating art a little bit more into what they're doing.
All right, well, thank you. So, Dr. Krasno, for children with ADHD, can the arts provide a wonderful outlet for expressing their energy and helping them with their focus?
I think that is certainly the case. For children with ADHD in certain settings, maybe academic settings, that have certain behavioral expectations. They may be receiving corrective feedback around their behavior throughout the day. So things like, pay attention or sit still for longer. And getting that kind of feedback on a routine basis can be hard for that child to build a positive self-image and self-esteem and build their confidence. And so I see the arts as a setting that is quite different, where there can be a lot more flexibility and choices and movement and different ways of expressing oneself. And for children with ADHD who might have higher levels of energy or different ways of focusing, like hyper-focusing on certain things, the arts can provide that opportunity for, those movement exercises or dance or theater. So things that are involving the whole body and really getting kids moving around. I would say some ways to involve children with ADHD in the arts could be really exploring with them kind of what it is that they're motivated by, what they're interested in. We know that motivation and interest can really increase engagement and active participation. And so helping nurture what it is that they're interested in, within the particular activity, helping them feel ownership over it, giving choices. This idea that it's not a linear progression, that there's different routes and journeys you can take in the arts, and what might that look like for that child. And I think that would really help to bolster and nurture their strengths, where they're then receiving positive feedback and building that sense of accomplishment.
All right. So, Dr. Malchiotti, not every child is going to be interested in pursuing the traditional art route. So, I'm wondering, how can parents help encourage these children to explore alternate art forms?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because, see, I don't look at the arts necessarily as goal-oriented. And I look at the child also as, what's the child's passion? What do they like to do? So how can I infuse that in arts-based experience in a different way? And so I think about the arts as sensory-based expression, because we're touching on so many different senses that children need to experience in order to grow and develop. So, I actually try to think about it in 4 areas that, when I'm working with parents, I kind of go through these. Again, I've mentioned movement before, movement-oriented experiences, not about formal dance, about an outcome that we need to be perfect at. But maybe putting a large piece of paper on a wall, giving children 2 big paint sticks, and just moving to music on that paper, making shapes and mark making on there, maybe even painting with one's feet on a large piece of paper. Things that are kind of outside the box of what we think of as art. Then there's the whole realm of sound, listening to music, making sounds together, parent and child, caregiver and child, teacher and child, singing vowels together, percussion on homemade drums. All those are kind of a little bit outside the box of the formal art forms of musical instruments.
Watch the full Ask the Expert segment on our website at awodtv.org if you want to learn more about this topic. You can also watch or listen on Facebook, YouTube, or on your favorite podcasting platform. Next, let's meet our latest difference maker. When the world sees Victor Bavanda What they can't see is the vibrant volcano of color bubbling inside him, at once explosive, cohesive, and attractive, ready to blow. And as often as he can, the Serbian-born boy, diagnosed at age 2 with autism, pours out eruptions of color onto paper. Brilliant birds, lovable hounds, even the Virgin Mary. And it sells. While much of the proceeds from his self-taught work funds Victor's education and therapy, his masterpieces also support charities that buoy neurodivergent folks like him. And that altruistic heart may be Victor's greatest masterpiece.
Victor is an amazing boy. He was born and raised in Serbia until 2018. Then we immigrated to the States. He was diagnosed with autism at age of 5. He is nonverbal. He can speak, but he has no communication at all. He started with drawing at age of 2, 3, so when he was able to hold the pen. So Victor has very strange technique how he holds the pen, but even though he has control of it. He was diagnosed with autism, but we were very surprised because we didn't know how to handle that. So first we were very scared, we were sad, and we had lots of emotions. But through the time we learned to live with Victor and his autism.
Jack and Joe went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his skirt, and Joe came tumbling after.
First, we didn't know that he communicates through art. In that time, in our home, all walls were full of his drawing. In that time, he draws cartoon characters. Even though we lived in Serbia, he knew the English alphabet. I don't know how. He was drawing, just taking a paper, and he was drawing with crayons.
And then he would cut the paper.
Yes.
And then he would play with the papers that he cut. For example, he would draw the alphabet, and then you would cut each letter, put it in order. So put the whole alphabet in order. Same with numbers and cartoons. And mostly what we think is that he found those cartoon characters and the alphabet and everything on YouTube. And so he repeatedly watched it until he completely memorized it. He's gotten much more communicative with us, especially through art. And that he's able to show his emotions and how he feels all throughout art, and sometimes even through his actions. Sometimes my mom, for example, could go into his room, ask him do you want to draw? And he's gonna be yet, no. And which means no, leave me alone. And we'll be alright, fine. And then later on, when we asked him, and he's when my mom asked him do you want to draw? And he just gets up and goes to the table. That means yes, I want to draw.
He prefers to draw animals and dogs, cats, and flamingos, safari animals.
When he draws, it usually takes him less than an hour to draw one piece. 30, 40 minutes max to draw one piece. And most of the time he does that in one take, 1 or 2 takes.
It is always so messy, and you cannot see from the beginning what it will be. He draws only with one hand. We are doing this for him, we are promoting him, that one day he can live with his work. Now he can pay for his school.
I think it's a good way because they can relate to a kid, to a peer who's like them, but who has managed to become, you can say, successful at
like creating art, creating something that's that can, inspire others. And it can also inspire other parents of autistic kids, because, it can give them hope that like their kid can maybe make a good difference in the world. They just need to find what the kid is good at. Even though he has autism, even though he has like kind of a barrier, like you can still go out and be successful, do a lot of things around the world that can help other people. And then like you can also be very successful at something that you like. You just need to find what you're good at.
Congratulations, Victor Bavanda, for making a difference. And that does it for this edition of A World of Difference, Embracing Neurodiversity. I'm Daryl Owens. I'll see you back here next time. You can watch episodes of A World of Difference on the Beacon College Facebook and YouTube channels and on the show's website, awodtv.org. The website also provides tip sheets and other resources for your parenting journey. You can watch the show from the PBS app available on your favorite streaming device, and you can listen on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you for watching and supporting A World of Difference.